The water turned crimson as Karen's screams echoed across the pristine backyard. What started as an entitled neighbor's illegal pool party became a nightmare when nature's deadliest predator emerged from the depths. But the real terror wasn't the massive snake coiling through the chlorinated water. It was discovering who had been feeding it for months, and why Karen's uninvited swim was no accident. The moving truck pulled away from 1247 Maple Street on a Tuesday morning, leaving behind tire tracks on the pristine driveway and Sarah Chen standing in her new doorway with a coffee mug that read "Home Sweet Home." She'd worked 3 jobs for 2 years to afford this slice of suburban paradise, complete with a kidney-shaped pool that sparkled like a sapphire in the California sun. Well, look what the cat dragged in. Sarah turned to find a woman in her 50s marching across the perfectly manicured lawn. Her blonde hair teased into a helmet that defied both gravity and good taste. She wore a hot pink tracksuit that screamed "I peaked" in 1987 and carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "I'm Karen Mitchell," the woman announced, stopping just short of Sarah's property line. "I run the Maple Street Homeowners Association. We need to have a little chat about your ... improvements." Sarah blinked. "Improvements? I literally just moved in 20 minutes ago. That pool." Karen pointed a French manicured finger at the backyard. "It's not regulation size. The HOA handbook clearly states that pools must be at least 15 feet from property lines, and yours is clearly only 14 feet 7 inches. How could you possibly know that?" Karen's smile was sharper than broken glass. "I measured last night with my flashlight." The audacity hit Sarah like a physical blow. "You were in my backyard, without permission. Public safety, honey. Someone has to maintain standards around here." Karen's voice dripped with false sweetness. "I'm sure it was just an oversight by your contractor, but rules are rules. You'll need to either move the pool or remove it entirely." Sarah's grip tightened on her coffee mug. She'd dreamed of this house, this pool, this life, for years. She'd sacrificed everything: dates, vacations, decent meals, saving every penny. And now this woman, this stranger, was telling her to tear it down because of 8 inches. "I'll have my lawyer review the HOA agreement," Sarah said carefully. "Oh, sweetie." Laugh was like nails on a chalkboard. "I am the HOA agreement. I wrote it, I enforce it, and I've successfully removed 17 non-compliant improvements in the past 5 years. Your little pool party paradise is about to become a very expensive mistake." As Karen click-clacked back to her house in her bedazzled flip-flops, Sarah noticed something else. The woman's backyard was visible through the chain-link fence, and it was a wasteland: brown grass, overgrown weeds, and what looked like a small mountain of Amazon boxes stacked against a rotting shed. "Interesting," Sarah murmured. The next morning, Sarah was awakened by the sound of splashing. She stumbled to her bedroom window and peered through the blinds. There, in her pool, was Karen Mitchell, doing what could generously be called water aerobics. Her massive frame displaced enough water to create small tsunamis, and she was actually singing "Girls Just Want to Have Fun" at the top of her lungs. Sarah grabbed her robe and stormed outside. "What the hell are you doing, Karen?" Didn't even pause her routine. "Morning exercise, sweetie. Doctor's orders. I have a condition. In my pool." "Well, it's not exactly your pool anymore, is it?" Karen executed a particularly aggressive jumping jack. "Since it's non-compliant, it's technically a public nuisance. Until you fix it, I'm treating it as community property." Sarah's mouth fell open. "That's not how any of this works." "Sure it is. I've been swimming here every morning for the past week. Haven't you noticed the water level dropping? I'm what you might call a displacement person." The woman had been trespassing for a week. While Sarah was at work, Karen had been treating her pool like a personal gym. The violation was so outrageous, so completely brazen, that Sarah couldn't even form words. "You need to get out, now, or what?" Karen stopped mid-jumping jack, her eyes gleaming with malicious delight. "You'll call the police. Honey, my ex-husband is Sergeant Tom Mitchell. My nephew is Officer Brad Mitchell. My second cousin twice removed is Detective Michelle Mitchell. Good luck with that." Sarah's blood ran cold. The woman wasn't just entitled. She was connected. This is insane. This is karma, sweetie. You should have done your homework before buying in a regulated community. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have 15 more minutes of hydrotherapy. As Karen resumed her aquatic assault on Sarah's pool, Sarah noticed something floating near the filter. At first, she thought it was a pool toy, but as she looked closer, her stomach lurched. It was a dead rat, bloated and pale, bobbing gently in the chlorinated water. "Karen, there's a dead rat in there." "I know, I saw it yesterday. Figured the chemicals would take care of it." Sarah stared at this woman, this creature who was willingly swimming with a decomposing rodent. "You're insane. I'm thorough, sweetie. I don't let little obstacles stop me from getting what I want." That evening, Sarah sat in her kitchen. Researching HOA law and property rights, the more she read, the more her heart sank. Karen wasn't wrong about the regulations. The pool was indeed 8 inches too close to the property line. But what made Sarah's blood boil was the discovery that Karen's own property was in violation of at least 6 different codes. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Pool party tonight, 8 p.m. Biob. Your favorite neighbor, Sarah." Looked out her window. Karen was setting up tiki torches around the pool, stringing Christmas lights, and arranging lawn chairs. She'd invited people over to Sarah's pool. For a party, the doorbell rang. Sarah opened it to find a thin man in his 30s with nervous eyes and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. "You're the new neighbor," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "I'm Marcus. I live 2 houses down, Sarah. Listen, I heard about your pool situation." With Karen, he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I need to tell you something about what happened to the last person who crossed her." Sarah's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "The Hernandez family. They lived in your house before you, at a beautiful garden, prize-winning roses. Karen said it was a fire hazard, too close to the property line. They fought her for months." "What happened?" Marcus's eyes darted around nervously. "Their garden died, overnight. Every plant, every flower. Like someone had poured acid on everything." Sarah's blood chilled. "You think Karen?" "I think Karen gets what Karen wants. And right now, she wants your pool." He glanced toward the backyard, where Karen's party was starting to get loud. "But here's the thing, she's not as untouchable as she thinks. That husband of hers, ex-husband, he divorced her last year. Took half her money, too. She's been spiraling ever since." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because someone needs to stop her. And maybe," he pulled out his phone, showing her a photo. "Maybe this will help." The image showed Karen's backyard, but not the wasteland Sarah had seen. This was from a different angle, showing a large wooden structure partially hidden by overgrown bushes. What is that? An unpermitted deck. Built 6 months ago, way over the size limit, no city permits, and it's blocking the drainage easement. Marcus smiled grimly. Karen's been so busy policing everyone else, she forgot to police herself. From the backyard came the sound of Karen's voice, amplified by what sounded like a bullhorn. "Welcome to the first annual Maple Street Pool Party. Tonight, we celebrate community spirit and shared resources." Sarah looked at Marcus. "How do you know about the deck?" "Because I'm a city building inspector, and tomorrow morning, I'm filing a violation report that's going to make Karen's life very, very complicated." As if summoned by their conversation, Karen appeared in the sliding glass door, wearing a neon green bikini that left nothing to the imagination, and holding a martini glass filled with what looked like blue antifreeze. "Sarah, darling, come join us. The water's divine." Behind her, at least 15 people were packed around the pool, drinking, laughing, and treating Sarah's property like their personal resort. The violation was so complete, so overwhelming, that Sarah felt something snap inside her chest. "That's it," she whispered. "What?" "I said that's it." Sarah turned to Marcus. "File your report. But I'm going to do something about this tonight." As she watched Karen cannonball into the pool, sending a tidal wave of water across the deck, Sarah noticed something else. Something that made her blood run cold. In the underwater pool lights, she could see shapes moving along the bottom. Not debris, not rats. Something alive, something big. And Karen, oblivious in her drunken revelry, was swimming directly toward it. The party was about to become something very different. Something that would change Maple Street forever. And for the first time since moving in, Sarah smiled. Sarah's smile vanished as she watched the dark shapes undulate through the illuminated water. Karen was doing her signature backstroke, arms flailing wildly, completely oblivious to the fact that she was no longer alone in the pool. Sarah whispered, grabbing his arm. "What kind of wildlife do you get around here? Nothing bigger than a raccoon." Why? Sarah pointed toward the pool. "Because there's something in there with her." Marcus squinted through the darkness. The party guests were too drunk to notice anything beyond their own conversations, but in the underwater lights, the shapes were becoming clearer. Long, serpentine forms gliding along the pool bottom with predatory grace. "Jesus Christ," Marcus breathed, "are those snake?" The scream came from a teenage girl near the shallow end. She was pointing at the water, her face white with terror. "There's a huge snake in the pool." The party exploded into chaos. People scrambled out of the water, drinks flying, chairs overturning, but Karen, either too drunk or too stubborn to acknowledge the danger, continued her backstroke. "Oh, please," she called out, still swimming. "It's probably just a garden snake." "You people are so dramatic." "Karen, get out of the water," Sarah shouted from her sliding door. "Now, I'm not falling for your little trick, sweetie. Nice try, though." But as Karen flipped to her front, she came face to face with something that made her blood-curdling scream echo across 3 neighborhoods. Rising from the water like a prehistoric nightmare was the head of a massive python. Easily 6 feet of visible body, its eyes reflecting the pool lights like golden coins. Karen's scream cut off abruptly as she went under. The water erupted in thrashing chaos. The snake, no, Sarah realized with growing horror. Snakes, plural, began to surface. 3 of them, each easily 12 feet long, their muscular bodies, creating whirlpools in the chlorinated water. "Call 911, Sarah shouted to Marcus, but he was already on his phone. The party guests had fled, abandoning their drinks and dignity in their sprint for safety. Only Karen remained in the pool, and she was no longer screaming. She was fighting for her life. One of the pythons had wrapped around her torso, its coils tightening with each of Karen's desperate movements. The other 2 circled like sharks, their massive heads breaking the surface as they assessed their prey. "I have to help her," Sarah said, though every instinct screamed at her to stay inside. "Are you insane? Those things will kill you both." But Sarah was already moving. She grabbed a pool skimmer from the deck and waded into the shallow end, her heart hammering against her ribs. The water was warm, warmer than it should have been, and she could feel the displaced currents from the massive bodies moving through. Karen, swim to me." Karen's head bobbed above the surface, her face purple with exertion. The python's coils had tightened around her chest, and she was gasping for breath between the waves. But she was moving, inch by agonizing inch, toward the shallow end. Sarah extended the skimmer pole. "Grab it." Karen's fingers closed around the metal just as the second python struck. Its head, massive as a watermelon, shot toward Sarah with lightning speed. She jerked backward, falling into the water, the skimmer pole flying from her hands. The python's jaws, lined with dozens of razor-sharp teeth, snapped shut inches from her face. "The deck," Marcus shouted from the edge of the pool. "There's a hose." Sarah spotted a garden hose coiled near the pool equipment. She lunged for it, her fingers closing around the nozzle just as the 3rd python surfaced directly in front of her. She squeezed the trigger. The high-pressure stream hit the snake square in the face, and it recoiled with a furious hiss. Sarah kept the stream focused on its eyes. Backing toward the shallow end where Karen was still struggling against the coiled python, the eyes, she screamed to Karen, "Go for the eyes." Karen, summoning strength from some primal reserve, drove her. Thumbs into the python's eye sockets, the snake released her with a shriek that sounded almost human, its body uncoiling in the water. Both women stumbled toward the pool steps, Sarah still wielding the hose like a weapon. The pythons, temporarily disoriented, circled in the deeper water, their massive bodies creating a whirlpool of rage and confusion. They collapsed on the deck, gasping and shaking. Karen's tracksuit was torn to shreds, revealing deep purple bruises where the python had gripped her. Her perfect hair was plastered to her skull, and her makeup had run into terrifying streaks. "Where?" Karen gasped. "Did those things come from?" Sarah stared at her. "You're asking me? This is my first week here. Someone had to put them there." Pythons don't just appear in suburban pools. The sound of sirens filled the air. Police cars, fire trucks, and what looked like animal control vehicles were racing down Maple Street, their lights painting the neighborhood in strobing reds and blues. Sarah Marcos appeared at the edge of the pool, his face grim. "We need to talk now. I've been making some calls. Those aren't just any pythons, they're Burmese pythons, illegal to own in California. And, according to the reptile rescue database, 3 of them went missing from an exotic pet dealer in Riverside 2 months ago." Sarah's mind raced. Someone stole them or bought them illegally. But here's the thing. Burmese pythons are ambush predators. They don't hunt. In groups like this, someone's been training them, feeding them, conditioning them to this pool. Karen struggled to her feet, water streaming from her ruined outfit. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying someone wanted you in that pool tonight, Karen. Someone who knew you'd be here." The implication hit Sarah like a physical blow. "You think this was planned?" "I think those snakes have been living in your pool equipment shed for weeks, maybe months, and I think someone's been feeding them regularly, keeping them docile until..." Tonight, Sarah's blood ran cold. The dead rat, the one floating in the pool yesterday, wasn't dead long enough to decompose. It was bait. Fresh bait. Karen's face had gone white. "Someone tried to kill me. Not kill," Marcus corrected. "Terrorize. This was about power, about breaking you." The animal control team arrived with nets and tranquilizer guns. It took 6 officers to subdue the 3 pythons, each one requiring multiple tranquilizer darts before they could be safely removed from the pool. As the last snake was loaded into a specialized transport vehicle, Detective Michelle Mitchell-Patterson approached. The group. Sarah recognized her immediately. She had Karen's sharp features and entitled posture. "Aunt Karen," she said, her voice professional but cold, "we need to talk. Michelle, thank God. Someone tried to murder me. I want a full investigation, forensics, the works." "That's not going to happen," Karen blinked. "What?" "I said that's not going to happen. Do you have any idea what kind of shitstorm you've created? Illegal reptiles, trespassing, unlawful assembly, property damage. I'm the victim here." "You're a lot of things, Aunt Karen, but victim isn't one of them." Michelle's voice was ice. "I've been getting complaints about you for months. Harassment, stalking, property destruction. The Hernandez family filed a report last year about their garden. The Washingtons documented 17 instances of you entering their property without permission." Sarah stared at the detective. "Detective knew about this. I've been building a case against her for months. Tonight just gave me everything I needed." Karen's mouth fell open. "You're my own niece, and you're an embarrassment to the badge. You've been using our family name to terrorize this neighborhood for years. It ends tonight. But someone put those snakes in the pool. Someone tried to kill me." Michelle pulled out a waterproof evidence bag. Inside was a small electronic device with a timer. "We found this in the pool equipment shed. It's a feeding mechanism, automated. Been dropping food into the pool every night at 2 a.m. for the past 6 weeks. Sarah's mind reeled. Who would do something like that? Someone who knew your schedule, Karen. Someone who knew you'd be swimming here tonight. Someone who wanted you to experience exactly what you put others through: fear, helplessness, the feeling of being hunted. Karen's voice was barely a whisper. Who? Michelle smiled grimly. Someone who's been watching you for a very long time. Someone who knew that, sooner or later, your entitlement would put you in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. But who? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Could be any of the neighbors you've terrorized. Could be the Hernandez family getting revenge for their garden. Could be the city inspector you tried to bribe last month. Michelle's eyes flicked to Marcus. Could be anyone who's tired of watching you destroy lives for sport. As the detective walked away, Karen turned to Sarah, her face a mask of rage. And fear. This is your fault. You brought this curse into our neighborhood. My fault? Sarah's voice rose. You've been trespassing on my property for weeks. You threw a party in my backyard. You've been swimming with snakes for God knows how long. Someone tried to kill me. Someone tried to teach you a lesson. Maybe next time you'll think twice before treating other people's homes like your personal playground. Karen's eyes narrowed. This isn't over, not by a long shot. Actually, Marcus said, appearing beside them with a stack of papers, it is. These are official violation notices for your property. Unpermitted deck, illegal waste storage, violations of drainage, easements, and about 6 other code infractions. You have 30 days to comply or face daily fines of F. Sarah didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside her window sent her heart racing. She'd moved a chair to face the sliding glass door, a baseball bat across her lap, watching the empty pool like a sentry. At 3:17 a.m., she saw it. A figure moving through her backyard, hunched low, carrying what looked like a bucket. The motion sensor lights should have triggered, but they remained dark. Someone had disabled them. Sarah grabbed her phone and crept to the window. The figure was kneeling by the pool equipment shed, doing something to the door. In the pale moonlight, she could make out dark clothing, a hood pulled up, gloves on their hands, and turned toward the house. Even in the darkness, Sarah felt their eyes on her. They raised one hand in what might have been a wave, then melted back into the shadows. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. The snakes were just the beginning. A friend Sarah's blood turned to ice. She hit send on the 911 call, but by the time the police arrived 20 minutes later, the figure was gone. The only evidence they'd been there at all was the bucket left by the pool shed. Inside were 3 dead rabbits, their necks broken, their bodies still warm. Fresh bait, Officer Rodriguez said grimly. Someone's expecting more guests. But the snakes are gone, Sarah protested. Animal control took them, all the ones we found. If there were, others hiding in the drainage system. The storm drains, the irrigation pipes. He shrugged. This whole neighborhood is connected underground. Sarah's knees went weak. You're saying there could be more? I'm saying whoever did this has been planning it for a long time, and they're not done. The next morning, Maple Street looked like a war zone. News vans lined the curb, reporters thrust microphones at anyone who'd talk, and half the neighborhood was packing moving trucks. The suburban snake nightmare. Sarah was making coffee when her doorbell rang. She opened it to find a woman in her 60s, silver-haired and elegant, holding a casserole dish. "I'm Eleanor Vasquez," the woman said. Sarah hesitated, then opened the door wider. "That's very kind, but you don't know who to trust. Smart girl." Eleanor stepped inside, her keen eyes taking in the baseball bat, the chair positioned by the window, the dark circles under Sarah's eyes. "You didn't sleep, would you?" "No, I wouldn't." Eleanor set the casserole on the kitchen counter, "which is why I'm here. You need to know what you're really dealing with." Sarah's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Karen Mitchell has been terrorizing this neighborhood for 8 years. But the snakes, that wasn't random revenge. That was personal, intimate. Someone who knows her habits, her schedule, her weaknesses. Do you know who? Eleanor's smile was sharp as a blade. "I know who it wasn't, and that's almost as important." She pulled out a manila folder, thick with documents. "I've been documenting Karen's reign of terror since she moved in. Every violation, every complaint, every family she's driven away. The Hernandez family was just the beginning." Sarah opened the folder. Inside were photographs, police reports, city citations, and what looked like a detailed timeline spanning years. "The Washingtons," Eleanor continued, "Karen claimed their children's playground was a noise ordinance violation. She called CP on them 6 times. They moved to Oregon last year. Karen said their curry cooking was creating health hazards. She called the health department so many times they threatened to fine her for false reporting. The Kowalski's Karen claimed their dog was aggressive. She poisoned it. They couldn't prove it, but we all knew." Sarah's stomach churned. She killed someone's dog. She's a sociopath, dear. A highly functional one, but a sociopath nonetheless. The question is, who finally decided to fight back? Eleanor spread the timeline. Across the kitchen table, look at the pattern. Every family she's targeted has moved away within 18 months. Except one. Sarah studied the documents. Who? The Changs. They disappeared. The word hung in the air like a physical presence. Sarah felt the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. "What do you mean? Disappeared?" "I mean, they were here one day, gone the next. No moving truck, no forwarding address, no goodbye. Their house sat empty for 6 months, then suddenly Karen owned it. Cash purchase, no mortgage, no inspection." Sarah's mind raced. I think Karen Mitchell is capable of anything? But here's what's interesting. Someone else thinks so too. Someone who's been watching her as carefully as she's been watching everyone else. Eleanor pulled out a magnifying glass and pointed to one of the photographs. A small camera, trail cam, Eleanor explained. The kind hunters use. It's been there for months, maybe years. Ooh, someone with access to exotic reptiles, someone who knows Karen's schedule, someone who understands surveillance and has experience with electronic timers and feeding systems. Sarah's blood ran cold. You know who it is. I have a theory, but theories are dangerous things when pythons are involved. Before Eleanor could explain further, the lights went out. The house plunged into darkness, and Sarah heard the unmistakable sound of her sliding glass door opening. "Stay calm," Eleanor whispered. "Don't move." But Sarah was already moving, her hand closing around the baseball bat. In the darkness, she could hear something large moving through her living room, something that made a sound like scales against hardwood floor. "The flashlight," Eleanor hissed. On the counter, Sarah fumbled for it, her fingers closing around the cold metal. She clicked it on and immediately wished she hadn't. Coiled in the center of her living room was another python, this one even larger than the ones from the pool. Its massive head was raised, its golden eyes fixed on them with predatory intelligence. But this snake was different. It wore a collar, a tracking collar with a small device attached. "It's been trained," Eleanor breathed. "Someone's controlling it." The python began to move, not toward them, but toward the kitchen table, where Eleanor's documents were spread out. With deliberate precision, it knocked over a glass of water, soaking the papers. "It's destroying the evidence," Sarah realized. "No," Eleanor said, her voice strange. "It's protecting it." The python's head turned toward them, and for a moment, Sarah could have sworn it nodded. Into the night, Sarah and Eleanor stood in the darkness, breathing hard, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Eleanor Sarah said slowly, "How did you know not to move? How did you know it wouldn't attack us?" "Because," Eleanor said, her voice barely a whisper, "I've been feeding it for 6 weeks." The admission hit Sarah like a physical blow. The automated feeder, the timer, the trail cameras, that was me. All of it was me. Sarah raised the baseball bat, but Eleanor held up her hands. "Wait, let me explain. The Chang family, they didn't disappear. They were murdered. Karen poisoned them, just like she poisoned the Kowalski's dog. She made it look like a gas leak, but I knew better. You're insane. I'm a retired forensic investigator. I spent 30 years catching killers. And Karen Mitchell is the most dangerous predator I've ever encountered." Sarah's mind reeled. "So you decided to kill her with snakes." "I decided to give her a taste of what she'd been dishing out. Fear, helplessness, the knowledge that someone bigger and stronger was hunting her. But she could have died. She could have, but she didn't. And now she knows what it feels like to be prey. The snakes are gone now, back to their sanctuary in Nevada. But Karen's nightmare is just beginning." "What do you mean?" "Her own family has turned against her. She's going to make mistakes. Big ones." Eleanor paused at the door. "You should leave, Sarah, tonight. Pack a bag and go stay with friends. Because when Karen figures out who orchestrated her pool party, she's going to come for revenge. And this time, she won't use snakes." "What will she use?" Eleanor's smile was colder than winter. "Fire. Karen's always been fascinated by fire. Ask the Hernandez family's garden. Ask the Chang's gas leak. Ask the 3 accidental house fires that happened to families who crossed her." As Eleanor disappeared into the night, Sarah realized the true horror of her situation. She wasn't just dealing with a python problem, or a property dispute, or even a psychotic neighbor. She was caught in the middle of a war between 2 killers, and only one of them was going to survive. The question was, which one wanted Sarah dead more? Outside, she could smell smoke. Sarah's phone buzzed as she grabbed her keys and purse. A text from Karen, "Hope you enjoyed your little snake show." She ran to the front window and saw a torrent flames dancing behind. The Kowalski house, 3 doors down. The family had moved out months ago, but the house had been on the market, empty and vulnerable. She dialed 911 as she ran outside. "There's a house fire on Maple Street, 1251 Maple. I think it's arson." The operator's voice was professional but urgent. "Ma'am, are you in immediate danger?" Sarah looked toward Karen's house. The windows were dark, but she could see a figure moving in the backyard. "I think I'm about to be." Fire department is 3 minutes out. Police are en route. But 3 minutes might as well have been 3 hours. Sarah could already see Karen emerging from the shadows, carrying what looked like a gas can, and wearing a smile that belonged in a horror movie. "Sarah, sweetie, I have a surprise for you." Sarah backed toward her car, but Karen was already crossing the street, moving with predatory purpose. In the flickering light from the burning house, Sarah could see that Karen's appearance had changed dramatically. Her perfectly styled hair was wild, her makeup was smeared, and her eyes had the glassy sheen of someone who'd completely snapped. "You thought you were so clever," Karen continued, splashing gasoline in a wide arc across Sarah's driveway, "getting your little friends to terrorize me with those snakes. But I've been dealing with snakes my whole life, honey. Human snakes. And I know exactly how to handle them." Sarah's car keys were in her hand, but Karen had positioned herself between Sarah and her vehicle. The smell of gasoline was overwhelming, and Sarah realized with growing horror that Karen had been preparing for this moment. "The Hernandez family thought they were clever too," Karen said, pulling out a lighter. "Beautiful garden," they said. "Historic roses," they said. "Two bad gardens burn so easily." "Karen, you're not thinking clearly." "Oh, I'm thinking perfectly clearly. Do you know how easy it is to make a gas leak look accidental? How simple it is to rewire electrical boxes so they spark at just the right moment?" Words echoed in her head. Karen's always been fascinated by fire. She needed to keep Karen talking until the fire department arrived. "You killed the Changs." The Changs were drug dealers. Everyone knew it. That just helped the community solve its problem. They were pharmacists. The same thing. Karen's smile was demonic. "Did you know that certain prescription medications are highly flammable? Mix them with the right household chemicals, and boom, accidental explosion. Very tragic. Very convenient." Sarah could hear sirens in the distance, but they seemed impossibly far away. Karen heard them too, and her expression darkened. "We need to speed this up," she said, flicking the lighter. "This isn't about property lines or HOA regulations. This is about power, about maintaining order, about making sure people like you understand their place." "What place is that?" "Beneath me, always beneath me." Karen raised the lighter, and Sarah saw her life flash before her eyes. But before Karen could drop the flame, a figure emerged from the shadows behind her. Eleanor, moving with the stealth of someone half her age, struck Karen's wrist with a telescoping baton. The lighter went flying, clattering across the asphalt. "You always were sloppy with evidence," Eleanor said calmly. "Even back in high school." Karen spun around, her face contorting with rage. "Eleanor fucking Vasquez. I should have known you'd stick your nose where it doesn't belong." "Oh, it belongs here. It's belonged here for 43 years, ever since you pushed Jenny Morrison off the gymnasium bleachers." Sarah stared at the two women, realizing she was witnessing something that went far deeper than neighborhood disputes. This was personal. This was history. "Jenny Morrison was an accident," Karen snarled. "Jenny Morrison was pregnant with your boyfriend's baby." Karen lunged at Eleanor, but the older woman was ready. She sidestepped with the grace of a trained fighter, bringing the baton down on Karen's shoulder. Karen screamed and stumbled, but she wasn't finished. "You can't prove anything," Karen gasped. "You never could. That's why you waited all these years. That's why you needed the snakes, the dramatics. Because you're just a bitter old woman who, because I needed you to confess," Eleanor interrupted, "which you just did." Eleanor pulled out a small recording device, voice activated. "Been running since I got here." Amazing what people will admit when they think they're about to commit murder. Karen's eyes went wide. "You bitch. I'm a professional. There's a difference." The fire trucks arrived in a symphony of sirens and flashing lights. Behind them came the police, ambulances, and what looked like half the city's emergency response team. The burning house was already being doused with water, but Sarah realized it had been a distraction. Karen had planned to burn down the entire block, starting with the empty house and working her way to Sarah's detective. Deshelle Mitchell Patterson jumped out of the lead police car, her weapon drawn. "Karen Mitchell, you're under arrest for arson, attempted murder, and about 15 other charges we're still calculating." "Michelle, you have to listen to me. I don't have to do anything. You're done, Karen. Finished. The only question now is whether you're going to prison or a psychiatric facility." As the handcuffs clicked around Karen's wrists, she turned to Sarah with pure venom in her eyes. "This isn't over." "Actually," Eleanor said, "it is over. Has been for years. You just didn't know it yet." Eleanor handed Detective Mitchell Patterson a thick folder. Voice recordings, photographs, financial records, correspondence with exotic animal dealers, and about 20 years of documentation. Everything you need to connect her to the Chang murders, the Hernandez poisoning, and at least 6 other accidents in 3 different states. Sarah stared at Eleanor. You've been tracking her for 20 years, 43 years since high school. She's been a killer her whole life, just getting better at covering her tracks. But why didn't she? Because she was careful. Always careful. Never left evidence, never got sloppy. Until tonight. The real killer. She's been planning this for years. The snakes, the fire, all of it. Save it, Detective Mitchell Patterson said. We found the accelerant in your garage. We found the animal dealer receipts. We found the timer mechanisms. You're done lying. The police car pulled away. Karen's face pressed against the window, her mouth moving in what looked like curses or threats. We need to talk in private. They walked back to Sarah's house, past the fire trucks and the crowds of neighbors who'd emerged to watch the drama unfold. The smell of smoke and gasoline still hung in the air, but it was beginning to dissipate. Sarah said as they reached her front door. Thank you for everything. But I have to ask, how did you know she'd come after me tonight? Eleanor's smile was sad. Because I've been watching her for 43 years. I know exactly how she thinks, how she plans, how she kills. And I knew that, sooner or later, she'd get sloppy. But the snakes were never meant to kill her. They were meant to break her, to make her desperate enough to make mistakes, to force her into the open where I could catch her. Sarah nodded, but something about Eleanor's expression made her uneasy. There's something else, isn't there? There's always something else, Eleanor said. You see, Karen was right about one thing. I have been planning this for years, decades. But not just the snakes, not just tonight. What do you mean? Eleanor pulled out a key, Sarah's house key. I've been living in this house for 6 months, before you moved in, before you even knew it was for sale. Sarah's blood turned to ice. That's impossible. I'm a forensic investigator, dear. I know how to make things look impossible. The question is, are you ready to learn the truth about why you're really here? Eleanor stepped inside Sarah's house like she owned it, which Sarah was beginning to realize she might. The truth about what? About why Karen had to die, about why you were the perfect bait, and about what happens next. Sarah's phone buzzed. Welcome to the family business. Dad, Eleanor smiled. Right on time. He's been waiting to meet you. As Sarah stared at the text, she realized that everything, the house, the pool, the snakes, the fire, even Karen herself, had been orchestrated by people who knew exactly what they were doing, and she was about to find out why. The doorbell rang, and Sarah's world was about to change forever. Sarah's hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob. Eleanor stood behind her. No longer the helpful elderly neighbor, but something far more dangerous, a predator who'd been hunting for 43 years. Open it, Eleanor said softly. He's been waiting long enough. Sarah turned the handle and found herself face to face with a man in his 70s, silver-haired and distinguished. Wearing an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the lean build of someone who'd spent decades in physical danger. His eyes were the same piercing blue as Sarah's own. Hello, sweetheart, he said, his voice warm but carrying an undertone of steel. I'm sorry it took so long to explain. Explain what? Sarah's voice cracked. Who are you? I'm your father, and you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Sarah's knees buckled. Eleanor caught her arm, guiding her to the couch. That's impossible. My father died when I was 3. Car accident. My mother told me. Your mother told you what she needed to tell you to keep you safe, the man said, settling into Sarah's favorite chair like he belonged there. My name is Richard Chen. I was married to your mother for exactly 18 months, long enough to fall in love, conceive you, and discover that my work was putting both of you in mortal danger. Sarah's mind raced, like the family that disappeared from Karen's house, the family that was murdered in Karen's house. David and Lynn Chen were my brother and sister. They were helping me investigate a network of serial killers who'd been operating in suburban communities for decades. Karen Mitchell was just one cell in a much larger organism. Sarah stared at him. You're saying there are more people like Karen? I'm saying Karen was a foot soldier, a useful psychopath who eliminated problems for people with bigger plans. The Changs got too close to the truth, so Karen was ordered to eliminate them. But she got sloppy, greedy. She kept their house instead of disposing of it properly. Eleanor handed Sarah a glass of water. That's when we knew we had her. A serial killer who breaks pattern is a serial killer who makes mistakes. We, Sarah, looked between them. You two are partners, Richard said. Have been for 20 years. Eleanor's been my inside investigator while I've been tracking the network from the outside. We've been waiting for the right moment to move against Karen, and more importantly, to bring you into the operation. Into what operation? Richard opened a leather briefcase and pulled out a thick file. The Suburban Cleanup Initiative. We identify and eliminate serial killers who've embedded themselves in middle-class communities. People like Karen, who use HOA regulations, property disputes, and neighborly facades to hunt victims. Sarah's head was spinning. You're vigilantes. We're exterminators, Eleanor corrected. There are at least 47 Karen Mitchells operating in communities across the country. They target vulnerable families, isolated individuals, people who won't be missed immediately. They kill clean, cover their tracks, and move on when the heat gets too intense. But why me? Why now? Richard leaned forward. Because you're perfect bait. You represent everything these predators hunt. But more importantly, you're trained. I'm not trained for anything. You're trained. For everything? 3 black belts in martial arts that you think you learned for self-defense, advanced chemistry knowledge from a degree. You think you pursued out of academic interest, marksmanship skills from a hobby you think you picked up randomly, psychology coursework that you think was just intellectual curiosity. Sarah's world tilted. You're saying my entire life has been preparation. Every school you attended, every job you took, every skill you developed. We've been grooming you for this work since you were 18 years old. That's insane. That's family business, Eleanor said. Your father's been protecting you from a distance while preparing you for the day when you'd be ready to join the hunt. Sarah shot to her feet. I never asked for this. I just wanted a normal life, a normal house, a normal... There is no normal, Richard interrupted. Not when predators like Karen are hunting in every suburb in America. Not when serial killers are using home improvement stores as hunting grounds and neighborhood associations as cover for murder. You could have told me. We've tried 15 different times over the past 10 years. You weren't ready. You ran every time the truth got too close. Sarah's mind raced through the past decade. The job interviews that went nowhere. The relationships. That ended abruptly. The apartments where she never felt safe. The constant feeling that she was being watched. The house, she realized. You led me to this house. We led you to Karen, Eleanor said. The house was just the battlefield. We needed someone she'd target immediately, someone who'd trigger her territorial instincts. You were perfect. So everything that happened, the pool violations, the trespassing, the snakes, was designed to push Karen past her breaking point, to make her sloppy enough to confess to murders she'd committed 20 years ago. Sarah sank back onto the couch. You used me. We saved you, Richard said. Do you know what would have happened if you'd bought a house in one of the other communities we investigated? If you'd encountered one of the other 47 killers we're tracking, I'd have been dead within 6 months, Sarah whispered. Karen was the safest option. Predictable, controllable. We could manage her threat level while you learned the truth about what you really are. What am I? Eleanor smiled. You're a hunter, Sarah, just like us. It's in your blood, your training, your instincts. Tonight, when Karen came at you with that gasoline, what did you do? Sarah thought back to the confrontation. I kept her talking. I looked for escape routes. I positioned myself, too, to survive and gather intelligence. Classic hunter behavior. You didn't panic, you didn't freeze, you didn't beg. Because you trained me to. Because you were born to, Richard said. The question now is whether you're ready to embrace it. Sarah looked at her hands, realizing they weren't shaking anymore. The terror she'd felt earlier was gone, replaced by something else, something that felt like purpose. How many others are there? People like Karen, 47 active killers that we've identified. Probably twice that many we haven't found. Yet they're organized, well-funded, and they're getting bolder. What happens to them? They disappear, Eleanor said simply. Same way their victims disappeared? Justice. Sarah stood up, pacing to the window. Outside, the fire trucks were finishing their work. The Kowalski house was damaged, but not destroyed. The neighborhood would recover. but she was beginning to understand that recovery was an illusion. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "what happens?" "Next, training. Real training. You'll learn advanced surveillance, psychological profiling, forensic investigation. You'll learn how to identify killers before they kill, how to gather evidence they can't destroy, how to eliminate threats they can't escape." And if I say no, Richard and Eleanor exchanged glances. "Then you go back to your normal life. New identity, new location, new job. You'll be safe, but you'll never be free, because you'll always know what's out there, hunting people who can't protect themselves." Sarah turned back to them. "The other 47, are they all like Karen? Some are worse, some are smarter, some are more careful, but they all have one thing in common. They think they're untouchable." "Are they not anymore?" Eleanor said. "Not with you." Sarah walked to the sliding glass door, looking out at the pool where this had all started. The water was clear now, peaceful, reflecting the stars. But she could still see the shadows moving beneath the surface, the memory of predators that had been driven away but not destroyed. "When do we start?" she asked. Richard smiled. "We already have. Your next target is in Phoenix. Rebecca Martinez. She's been using a homeowners association to target immigrant families. 17 families have disappeared in the past 3 years. How long do I have? She's planning to eliminate the Ramirez family next week. They have 3 children under the age of 10. Sarah felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. Not fear this time, purpose. "What's the plan?" Eleanor handed her a file. "You're going to buy the house next door to Rebecca Martinez. You're going to trigger her territorial instincts, just like we did with Karen, and then you're going to give her a choice." "What choice?" "The same choice we gave Karen. Confess and face justice, or disappear and let justice find her anyway." Sarah opened the file, studying the photographs of Rebecca Martinez and the missing families. Children's faces smiled back at her from school photos and family portraits. Children who would never grow up if Rebecca wasn't stopped. "There's something else," Richard said. "Something we need you to understand before you commit to this." "What?" "Once you start hunting, you can't stop. The work changes you. It has to. You'll do things that normal people can't imagine. You'll become someone that normal people would fear." Sarah looked at her reflection in the sliding glass door. A woman who'd survived a python attack, a gasoline, fire, and the revelation that her entire life had been orchestrated by people she'd never met. "I'm already someone normal people would fear," she said, and for the first time in her life, Sarah Chen smiled like a predator. Outside, a car pulled up to the curb. Inside were 3 people who looked like they belonged in a suburban family portrait. But Sarah could see that